Any other questions?
If no one else, I have one last quick question. Many of us believe that at this current period, while these kinds of events here in Geneva, where we are taking advantage of the examination of the U.S. report, U.S. review by the Council to raise these critical questions, we believe also, though, that within the U.S., we have to dramatize our demands for the respect of our fundamental human rights. Many people believe that in the area of housing, that one way or some ways in which that needs to be done is to actively resist evictions, to actively dramatize the plight of people who are losing their homes by resisting foreclosures. So my question is first to Tyler. Had the residents of the building anticipated or even thought about the possibility of being evacuated for whatever those reasons were? And if they had, would they have been prepared to actively to engage in civil disobedience by not leaving their residence? And to Deborah, I wanted to find out from you, do you think that people are prepared to actively make demands for housing by engaging in more aggressive tactics like eviction defenses? And then to Brother Sali, I'd like to find out from you. I know that CORE engages in a lot of litigation around the issues of housing and evictions. What do you see, short of these kinds of tactics, what do you see should be the responsibility of groups like yourself in terms of providing trainings to community activists to augment or supplement the litigation strategies?
Do we start with me?
Yes.
The people of the Kent, because they were threatened with imprisonment or $1 million fine, as Guy was talking about, they really couldn't do that kind of disobedience. And they were forced out and the doors broken down, so there was a potential of violence there. They did disobey in a very positive way, in that I persuaded them, and also Deborah, to, get with the landlord and put those sprinkler systems in, and they really challenged the fire department and said, okay, we have to fix this place, what do we do? So instead of going against them, they kind of astounded them by, we're here, and they volunteered to be fire marshal, and they wouldn't leave in that way. They just insisted on putting their money in. They actually put in a lot of the repairs themselves. And every time they do a repair, there was another that they'd come up with. There was one agency and there was another agency. But they did try. But the problem is, when they did get back after 3 months, which is a miracle. In fact, Tiffany Gardner at Nesri said that was an example that they actually got back in using these tactics. But the problem is, when they got back in, and even though the loft law has been passed, and partly because of Deborah and efforts of that community, they, there's a trick to it, because the landlord was allowed to keep the rent where he wanted to start with. So $6,000, they can't afford that. So there's always, even though it looks like there's legislation or a law being passed, it's always a counter law. It's always against the people. It doesn't seem, and Bloomberg was really angry about the loft law, and somebody quoted to me that he said it's going to ruin business in New York, the loft law, that we need to have those people out, even though they're paying quite a lot of rent. So the other part of the film is about King Arthur, Arthur Wood, who actually owned this place called Broken Angel. he is in his place right now. I helped him move back in, and he is disobeying by being in a foreclosed building. Unfortunately, we tried to give him all kinds of help, and nobody really has helped him, and he's been his own defense against the bank and the developer. There was fraud, there was all kinds of outright crimes, and nothing was done about it. And right now, it looks like he's going to be dragged out of his building, and I'll be there to film it, but that man has disobeyed, and he's been there for a year living in a foreclosed building.
Yes, in Los Angeles, most of our residents that live in the downtown community live in residential hotels. We have a couple of ways that we created a defense. First, in downtown LA, there's what owners used to do, the 28-day shelter. Like every 28 days, you have to move out of your unit, stay out a few days, and then move back in. What we did is we created an ordinance where, on a state level, that if you have the money to pay your rent, you don't have to move out. So the 28 days shuffle was averted. In the downtown community, there was a redevelopment plan put in place by the city, whereas owners of residential units can transfer from residential units to condos and lots. Well, we also passed an ordinance whereas no residential hotel in downtown community could be converted to condos and lots. Not only in the downtown community, but citywide. So we were able to make sure that if you was in your unit and an owner decided that he wanted to convert to condos and loft and put a lease plan in place, that was not possible. We also, had developers coming in, nonprofit developers coming in and was buying up whole buildings. And they was evicting folks just on massive levels. Whereas now, you would have to come in. And those residents that was evicted illegally had the right to move back in. So we have a one-to-one replacement. For any developer that want to do some development in the downtown community, have to put in place a one-for-one replacement in the downtown community. And we're trying to work around citywide.